My biggest fear would be when the first comes and I don't get the rent.
I found that my tenant had dumped concrete down my toilet. Can you believe Fair Housing fined me $5,000 for that?
How do you onboard your tenants? What do you do?
I don't even know if I do it right. If you're a landlord, don't just rent, rent perfect. The Rent Perfect podcast with property expert and private investigator, David Pickron.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Rent Perfect podcast. I got Heather Johnson here. Heather, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Heather, you're one of the staples. I don't even know if I need to introduce you, but one of the vice presidents here at Rent Perfect, just taking care of all of our real estate investor clients.
It's good to be back. I feel like it's been a minute since I've been on a podcast. So.
It's been a little bit of a while, and we're actually going to lose you for a couple months because you're getting ready to have your first little girl.
Yes, got a little girl coming here, so I'm excited about that.
So if Heather pulls back from the microphone a little bit today, it's because that little belly is pulling back. But you're so cute, and we appreciate you being here, and we're looking forward to seeing you as a mother.
Thank you.
Heather, I got a question for you. Have you ever done yoga?
I do a lot of yoga right now.
Do you? So
well, like pregnancy type maternity yoga.
Right.
Not like.
So if you ask my wife, she said, my husband's kind of uptight, doesn't know how to relax. He just always wants to work, and my mind goes a million miles an hour. So last night she talks me into going over and doing this beginning yoga class. Now, my wife's been going there for years, so she's like could stand probably on one tippy toe and balance and do great. And I'm all over the board and kind of embarrassed that I'm the husband of the group here and can hardly balance myself or have any strength. So she takes me over there and she says the whole point is we're going to learn to do this breathing and we're going to learn to relax. And
she's hoping you'll relax because she's like, I need you to chill out.
Yeah. She's talking
I need a slower pace, Dave.
She's talking about things I don't even know about, right? So the lady's like, okay, 6 seconds, breathe in for 6 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds.
Got me breathing over here.
And yeah, and I'm like a quick breather. I realize I'm a real shallow breather. I'm like, I can't, I need air, And so I'm thinking about you and me a year ago and me, saying, challenging you, Heather, you know this business. You've been in here a long time. It's time for you to become a landlord. So we did a podcast and we challenged you on the podcast to go look for a new home, keep your current home you're living in, and turn that into a rental. So we had you go buy a new home, and then it gave you like 6 months for them to build it as you started to prepare your investment life, right? Do you remember that?
Of course.
Okay. And as I sat
Good
across
times.
the microphone from you, I said, this girl's actually going to do it. She's going to do it. We challenged.
Yeah, well, you and my husband both were like, no, we're going to do it. Like, this is time. Let's do this.
We're doing this.
Let's get on the road. It was a lot of fun. We have no regrets there. It's been working out great.
So as we got closer to you moving into your new home, you had to start prepping your old home, and you started getting more and more nervous. And, like, you needed to go to yoga then, right? We need to get the breathing going, okay? And so it became time for you to move out, and we did a podcast about a month and a half ago, and it talked about your first experiences as a landlord. And where we left off was you had went through somebody's background. You did all the proper things, and you found some glitches, and you found some things you weren't comfortable with. So
during the qualification.
During the qualifying process. And you actually ended up deciding to give them an adverse action letter and declining them.
Yeah, so, and they were declined. I had to go by my rental criteria.
Right.
But part of it for a time, I mean, their credit was in the conditional range, but there was some things that, thanks to some strategies we used, I discovered, actually they don't meet this criteria. They're too high risk for me.
Right. So they had over 2 months of late payments, and that's kind of what was in your criteria.
Yeah.
That allowed you to point to the criteria and say, hey, I'm sorry you didn't pass this. And then when we left off, the next day you're actually going to show the property to somebody else.
Okay.
So I want to take off. Well, let's talk about that next day. And now just to fast forward, they've lived there for a couple months, who we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. They've paid you a couple months. You've actually had a maintenance request. I mean, now you're starting to get into more.
Yeah, I've had a great experience, though.
Right.
It's been a lot of fun.
Let's go back to that showing. Tell me about the showing.
Well, first I want to say we did show the property to several people, but this is the showing where, started really feeling good.
The start
and it was
of the
working
relationship,
out. The start of the relationship for my current tenants. So, yeah, we met them at the property, and, They took a look at it. We had a great conversation, just kind of shooting the breeze. They had moved here 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know the exact date, from the Midwest somewhere. So they were excited to have a lawn again, and which was great because you're responsible for the landscaping at our property. So it was just feeling really good. And they were disclosing some things that I was happy to hear, about job status, income.
So when you walked away at this point, you said these guys aren't looking for any property. These guys want my property, because you were asking them questions about, why do you like this property, right?
Yeah.
And they were telling you all the things you wanted to hear. We want a lawn, we want this, and you're like, okay, these possibly could be long-term renters.
Right.
Okay. Continue on.
Yeah, so sent them that evening, like maybe 2 or 3 hours later, they sent me a text, hey, we want to apply, what do we need to do? So got all excited, got my Rent Perfect app ready, logged in, sent them the invites, and they filled out the applications. Everything was just really smooth this time. So, I have some requirements that, they need to make sure to review the rental criteria. I had already told them I required 12 months bank statements. That was a code word I used in my listing, so they knew right off the bat to verify income and rental history payments. I need those bank statements. No issue getting the bank statements. A couple questions just to verify exactly what I need.
Right.
Sent those right over. So, everything was just really jiving this time.
Now, if you remember the last podcast, you had a little bit of problems getting bank statements from the prior people who applied, right?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me the difference between just the experience,
Well, yeah, it was just like I said, it was just jiving this time. He knew what I needed, more than willing to give it. The other people were willing to give it, but it was a little bit of like this awkward back and forth. And I remember coming to you before and I'm like, okay, well, they sent this. Is this
screenshots.
Okay? And it was like going through this initiation. You're like, you know what you need.
Right.
It's your rental. You accept what you want to accept. But this time it was just so much easier. Sent me right what I needed. There was no, going back and forth like, no, that's not what I need. I need a bank statement.
Right.
It's pretty simple.
Right.
So it just seemed like it was just going smoother this time. It was just more, I guess, meant to be. I don't know. That sounds kind of cheesy.
So it was a new landlord.
It's a business transaction.
New landlord. One process took days and kind of like.
It did take several days.
You kept questioning yourself and you kept coming to me for questions. And the second one, I think I hardly even heard from you. The second one just seemed to just flow and work for you. And sometimes we need to step back and just say, forget the details. Is this really working or is this really hard? Sometimes that situation right there will tell you where you're at with an applicant.
Yeah, and just and kind of the difference as well is with the very first applicants, the ones that I ended up having to decline, which is not pleasant. No one wants to have to decline someone, but you got to go by your rental criteria and make it a business, is the property was still getting turned. So I hadn't even officially listed it yet. They were a referral.
Okay.
And so I normally
from the neighbors.
From the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I normally wouldn't recommend just waiting around for applicants like that. Like, I need the bank statements. Here's your time limit. I've thought this through now.
Right.
So,
because you wasted 4 or 5 days on these guys really trying to get stuff and work, and it just was hard.
Yeah, and it hadn't even been fully listed yet, so I think that's kind of just some advice for other newer landlords. Like, don't wait like that. If they want to send you the bank statements, they'll send them to you.
You're talking like a star now, like a seasoned professional.
But yeah, it was so much easier with these applicants. They sent what we needed, so it was just going a lot better.
Okay, so did just as your mentor, just asking you a few questions, did you use the move in and move out?
Yeah, so we ended up getting them approved, and so we got the lease signed.
Okay.
I was leaving town, and so I felt like they had gotten the lease, and they had some questions about the lease, which I really liked because I could tell they were reading through it and taking it seriously, so I appreciated that.
Because they responded to your code words in your Zillow ad, right? And if you don't know what code words and you're listening to this, go back a couple episodes. We talk about using code words in Zillow, because if they're using the code words in the Zillow, listing, they're going to read your lease.
Yeah, and so some people might be a little annoyed by that, like, come on, just sign it. But I really appreciated it. I'm like, this is great. These are great questions. I appreciate that you want to make sure you understand things. I even adjusted some things in the lease just to kind of clarify.
Right.
The Rent Perfect custom lease creator makes that really easy. So I could tailor it
So you clarified it for them, so they understood it a little bit more.
So they understood it a little bit more.
Okay.
So I loved that. And then, when the time came, I initiated the move-in inspection. So what that did is they went through the property with their phone, took pictures,
So you send them also kind of like an invite to inspect the property. They
Right.
open up their app, and they start going through the home with their phone, and they start taking pictures of certain areas that they might think maybe it doesn't need to be repaired, but I didn't scratch this or I didn't do this, and there probably wasn't a whole lot because I know you have a pretty nice house.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice house. It's not brand new, so there's expected to be some things, but it's almost like that personality too, where it's like the real attention to detail.
Right.
Like some of the stuff I'm like, I didn't even notice that, but thanks.
Right.
But it's
Right.
a good sign. I mean, they weren't complaining. They were
Right.
just like, okay, they were being very thorough.
Just documenting.
And that's that personality that.
So
was
I wonder
great.
how they're going to leave your property. That makes me wonder, how are they going to leave your property if they're looking at it that
I
close
hope
going in?
I don't want them to leave.
Yeah.
So can you stay there a while, please?
Yes, they are going to be there a while, but in the 5 years, 6 years, 7
Yeah.
years, they're probably going to leave it pretty meticulous because it seems that's the kind of people they are.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
And so they did have some questions. I'll call it like a maintenance, not an issue per se, just some questions about the property. Like, an electrical outlet wasn't working, and they're new to being in a home. So I knew, it's a GFCI. We need
Right.
to go and help them figure that out. And we didn't mind going over there. We're not too far, maybe 15 minutes.
Right.
And I really, wanted to see the property.
Yes.
So-
Well, we teach you to stay close to it for 2 or 3 months when you have a new renter. So this was a chance for you to actually go in the house.
Yeah.
And kind of, how long had they been in the house when you went in to do that inspection?
Oh, what was that? I don't know, a month.
A month. So,
And they welcomed it. That
mhm.
it wasn't like intruding on them by any
Right.
means. They were
Right.
and they're very friendly, and the place looked great. It was good to see them. They had complimented the place and loving the backyard. They have
Right.
a dog that was doing great, so it was good.
So what do you think their first impression was with you as a landlord if they said, hey, we're having an electrical problem? How quickly did you get over there?
We tried to get over there pretty quick, but it was just kind of coordinating work schedules too. They're like, oh, you can come in if we're not here, but the dog. And we're like, we'd rather wait, and
Right.
we'll be there when you're there. Just
Right. But you're in communication.
yeah,
they absolutely
we're
know.
in communication. We want them to be happy. We
Mhm.
want to be good landlords. We're not,
Right. Right.
some people would have been like, oh, it's GFCI, figure it out. We were suspicious that it was. We didn't technically know for sure, but
Right.
I can't even remember if I texted you about that.
Isn't that great when you go in and you think you have a problem, then it's just push of a button, problem solved.
Yeah, well, we
Okay,
were hoping
thanks.
that's what it was because we had that experience with that.
Right.
But anyway, it was a good experience, and they seemed happy, and it was good.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
was so relieved. I remember texting you, and I'm like, I'm so glad that I used those bank statements and held out for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
They pay rent early.
They use a rent pay system,
They
right?
use the online rent pay, so it goes right into my bank account. And I just remember when I got the second rent payment, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
They paid early. Everything's going great. This was so worth it.
So now you can focus on your life, your new little baby coming in, your new home. I mean,
Yeah.
you got a lot going on this year, Heather.
I know. Which is
And-
another reason why the bank statements were so important for us,
Right.
particularly.
Right.
We use that strategy because we don't have time to mess around. Or I don't
It's
know
your
the
first
words.
rental.
It's
You
our
don't-
first rental. Like,
You don't have time to mess up, right? If someone
Right.
doesn't pay you, 100% of your rentals aren't getting paid. That's not when you need to make a
yeah,
mistake,
the
right?
tenant success is my success, so that's how we
Yeah.
viewed it, and it's paid off, and it's going great.
So
I hope they're happy there. It seems like they are.
I'm going to keep that 12-month bank statement for quite a while now because of the eviction moratorium. Now that's been lifted as of today, but I really think it's strong, powerful. We got away from it years ago. Before really the internet, we used to do stuff like that, but it was hard to get a bank statement back then. They had to go down to the bank, and so we were like, that's kind of hard for us. But now with them on their phone,
Download.
I'm keeping that strategy. I love it. It came up in this whole eviction moratorium kind of mess, but I think it's a good nugget for us as landlords to use.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, I hope these guys stay for a long time and pay off many mortgage payments of yours.
Yeah, I hope.
Okay.
It seems like, now we're just wondering, this is going really well, so when can we get our second property?
Oh, she's got the bug.
Yeah,
There's the
so I've got the
investment bug
bug.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I tell you what, let's invest in our little baby here in the next month or two, and then let's have another podcast about where do we go from here. Because Heather, you're not gonna want to be in a position where you're buying 51 rental and go that fast. But if we can get you just to do 1 or 2, every couple of years, you eventually 10 years down the road will have a nice portfolio.
Sure.
And that's how most people do it. I know some of the big guys, talk about buying all this stuff, and we just go slow and steady. We make sure we get good deals. But ultimately, what we're talking about today is finding the right people to take care of those investments. And that is so, so important. Thank you. I'm so grateful to actually have someone here in the company that went from non-investor to now asking me, when do I do my second one?
Yeah, when?
How cool is
this.
that?
It's very fun.
How cool is that? Well, thanks for updating us on that. And I look forward to even documenting more of your investment goals and your investment trail into the future. And thank you so much for being here today. And until next time, continue to rent perfect.